I'm Dean Reed with DPR Construction, and I helped write the paper. Martin, what was your
I'm
role?
Martin Maraziki, and I'm a former professor at the University of New South Wales, and I consult as Maraziki Associates in Lean. And I've written a case study recently about DPR, and Dean asked me to get involved in writing this paper.
The gentleman highlighted, people highlighted in yellow at the top are our inspiration, the leader of our quality effort, and the second one is the president of our company, which is about a $5 billion U.S. construction company, who contributed to the paper and agreed to be the second author to make the point to the company that this was really important, top priority. So I'm going to take you through a little background. This is mostly based on our A3. So our quality mission is being so skilled at understanding project stakeholder expectations and developing measurable acceptance criteria that our projects experience zero rework. That is our mission. The current conditions throughout the industry and pretty much within our company is we build it. We're very proud of that. We check it. We use lagging indicators, which means we identify the defects and we put them on a list and argue about which software is best to keep the list. And then we rebuild and rework it. In terms of our goals and targets, we want to design and build from knowledge and information. That's our goal. So before production and the point of release into production, and this is production of information, design information, procurement information, cost information, schedule information, or actual physical product. Before or after we produce, all of those things. We want to read that well. We want to understand expectations, align the team, agree on acceptance criteria, and then design, build, and evaluate. That's our approach. That's what we want to do. And of course, you see it's very simple. I want to note that when we design, build, and evaluate, we want to follow plan, do, study, act, which was what Deming taught Japanese and tried to teach Americans in particular in terms of the continuous improvement cycle. So in terms of the current situation, we have unpredictable variation in outcomes. Now we all know that variation is not good for production, but when they're unpredictable when you have unpredictable variation in outcomes, it's not very good at all. It's very bad. So our proposed countermeasures in terms of moving, we like to think of it as moving from unknown to known, is first, change the language, and we are doing that, and I'm showing you the language that we are using now. Then the next thing we want to do is align people's language, all of the stakeholders on the project, the owner, the designers, certainly us as a general contractor, and the trade contractors. And we want to teach and coach behaviors. And then we want to keep continually describing the new culture. Constantly. We want to over-communicate that. And we view this as a cycle, continuously following this cycle to change, to shift minds. So in terms of our countermeasures, we focus on distinguishing features of work. We call them DFOW. So the first question we ask is, what outcomes do stakeholders value most? And we ask all of the stakeholders. Where have you had problems in the past? What were your common rework issues? What were common failures? Here we find the trade contractors particularly valuable, but we ask this of everyone. And then we move to the next question, which is, what is new, unique, or challenging about this work? And then finally, what areas require increased attention to get it right? That's what make up a distinguishing feature of work, those questions there. And this is based on our considerable experience in getting things wrong. So in terms of countermeasures, we focus on the point of release. Now this is a concept that we were taught by an owner, Digby Christian of Sutter Health, who proposed that in terms of minimizing risk for the owner, that all of the work and information that you see in that circle should be done before you release anything for fabrication or procurement. And he called that the point of release. We've taken it a step further. We want to do all that. That to the left is the information that we're producing. We want to apply the point of release concept in a flow model all the way through. So we don't think of it as a one point of release. There's literally thousands of points of release in the project, but the major ones you see here in this diagram, that should look familiar to most of us. So there are certainly big gates, and we have to make sure that we have quality and understand quality expectations before we do the work, involved in all these stages. So our plan is to raise awareness and educate through telling stories, change ownership and quality measurements, and that means collaborative leadership from the owner to the craft, all the way through. We want to identify DFOWs, document them, and make them visual. We want work groups develop and crews we want work groups to develop and the work crews to understand measurable acceptance criteria before starting work. And we want first installations accepted with no rework. That's our first leading indicator. So this is the blueprint through all the phases of design and construction. So we want quality-based discussions before that point of release and before we execute on the acceptance criteria. So that again means aligning expectations with focusing on DFOWs, align the team, again focusing on DFOWs, agree on the acceptance criteria. And we stress measurable acceptance criteria, that's part of our language. And then we want to design, build, and evaluate through construction and commissioning, and which includes all of the items in yellow here. So in terms of our plan on telling stories, this is one of our favorite stories. This is the conceptual image of a project at a major university in the United States, and we followed exactly the program I've explained here, and made sure that we understood both the prescriptive and descriptive, meaning the distinguishing features of work, and understood the measurable acceptance criteria, And that was the result. And below, you can't read it, was a tweet from the president of the university calling attention to this. So we're very proud of that story. Another story that we use a lot is this one, what we've done on a major hospital project to communicate the distinguishing features of work to the work crews. So in conclusion, we believe we have a way now, for the first time, to close the knowing-doing gap. We believe, as Dr. Ballard said this morning in the plenary, it requires a paradigm shift. So the old way is guess and do, then know and rework. So we guess at acceptance criteria, we do the work, then we find out that that wasn't correct, and then we rework it. The new way is know and do. Our second big conclusion is that we think this is a simple and elegant solution, and particularly the lean people in our company are all on a quest for simple and elegant solutions, just like Toyota. So we want to shift the paradigm and behaviors to a quality mindset. So we have the new mindset that we're creating, and we believe we will get new results and better results. Dr. Berzecki, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Dean. Yeah. Should I use that? This one? Okay. For me, I guess my subtitle for this paper really is that it's a holistic approach to ensuring quality across the whole process. And I met DPR basically when I wrote a case study in a book 3 years ago, and they were one of the case study companies. Before that, I had done some research on quality and published it at an IGLC in 2006, actually, where we had actually, as a part of that work, we had actually asked 110 subcontractors in the Sydney residential, high-rise residential market, who are your customers? There was only one answer, the general contractor. So actually people didn't have any visibility of who their customers were. And when I met with DPR and got to know what they were doing, I realised that what they've developed really is a fundamental shift. It is a new paradigm because it actually embraces a whole lot of ideas. And one of the challenges we have at this conference, I guess at all conferences, but at this conference in particular, where we have practitioners presenting case studies and we have researchers presenting their research. The researchers focus in on a particular issue, and then they set up an experiment and they present the results of their research. And so we get this very fragmented view, and people talk about quality in different ways, but very rarely holistically. It struck me that what DPR have achieved is that they've used a whole lot of theoretical constructs in taking this holistic view towards the delivery of quality and lean at the same time. So in looking at this, and in fact, because in my case study I described their work a little differently to the way that they described their work, so I'd actually used different language and I'd referred to some different theoretical bases. Dean actually asked if I would make a contribution to the paper, and I have to say it's a very minor contribution, and I could have done it much more fulsomely in a bigger paper perhaps at a different time, but there wasn't a lot of time when I got involved. But for me, quality basically has to be applied at all of these stages. And when we research, we tend to look at one or another of these stages. But the definition, understanding what the client's brief is, interpretation, actually interpreting the client's brief for the whole of the supply chain. And then in design, making sure that we convert that intent into reality, and finally on site, achieving it. And when we look at quality papers that are presented in our conferences, we see people actually focusing generally on one of these areas. So what I see is that in fact, in their process, DPR are doing all of these things. So they're looking at briefing and improving their briefing. They're actually getting their supply chain and their clients together in a way, in an interactive process to better understand what the client's brief really means. And they're particularly doing this, and they hadn't thought of it, but I pointed out that quality function deployment, and there have been a number of papers at IGLC conferences on quality function deployment, not very many I have to say, I think only 6 before this one that actually mentioned the term. But they are actually doing value engineering, quality function deployment, and you know, the distinguishing features of work is actually a constantly evolving body of work. It is the interface, in a sense, between the technical people who are doing the work and the client's requirements. So what do we need to look at to really understand what the client wants? What do we have to do to really convert that into language that our whole subcontract supply chain understands? And so in design, they're using all of these more, if you like, more theoretical constructs in their work. They're building quality in, they're looking at constructability, they're looking at safety, they're looking at lean production, they're continuously improving because of the way they've structured their approach. So in fact, they're applying all of these techniques across their processes, and in fact they're not just focusing on quality. So we're here in a panel on quality, and I sometimes think that, you know, in this community, there's a bit of confusion about what quality is, because I think at a high level, and that's what my book was about, in fact, sort of the fact that quality and lean are two lenses through which we look at organisation and project excellence. And there's not a lot of difference between those two. And they're converging, in fact. ISO 9000 now, I think the next iteration in a few years will probably almost be a lean document. We're over time. Okay, I have to stop. So I've just attempted to put into perspective all of the things that this case study actually refers to. And so we're in danger if we just think of it as a case study, because it covers all of that. Thank you.
Okay. Tina Martin, please.